All right, so there's one.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have the second one, which is basically, oh sorry, it's basically the same bridle as my sensitive mare's snaffle bridle, and it has even a thicker pad.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay, because one of the aspects of a double bridle is pull pressure from the purchase, okay? And when we're talking about curb bits, there's parts. This is the mouthpiece, this is the shank, and this is the purchase, okay? And when the curb is used for leverage, some of the leverage is on the chin, some of the leverage is on the tongue, and some of the leverage, when this pulls down,
Yeah, I can feel it in my hand right now.
pulls down on the pole,
Yeah.
okay? So I have even a thicker pad here for that mare that's very sensitive, okay? So otherwise, they're the same.
Okay.
Well, they're not exactly the same, sorry. This double is adjustable on the top,
Yeah.
okay? This is a very fine-boned, small-faced mare that I have, and if I have a lot of buckles, like the buckles that are on the side here or here, then it looks too heavy for her,
Yeah.
okay? All these buckles of your pieces,
Yeah.
all of these buckles go up higher for her. And this is another reason why the padding is really important, so that she doesn't get her ear, God forbid, on the buckle.
Yeah.
So it's just a style of bridle. It doesn't work any better or less in terms of fitting the horse, but it is more comfortable for her.
Yeah. And I think, you know, that's a good rule of thumb. People will sometimes, you know, write to me and say, well, what kind of bit do you use? What kind of bridle? What kind of saddle? And, you know, I always say, before you make an investment, because it is an investment, we talked about that before, try as many things as you can, because the bottom line is it's going to come down to your horse's personal preference, like your very sensitive mare, and you have to be aware of what fits correctly in your horse's mouth, and things like the sensitivity of the ears and the poll, to all those things you were talking about.
The only reason I picked, oh, okay, so this one's yours. We're going to look at this one in depth when we put it on Moshi.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about the different kinds of bits, but I think you can see, if we zoom on this, that this mouthpiece is tilted forward
Ever so slightly,
about 30 degrees.
Yeah.
And this is a certain kind of pressure on the tongue and less pressure on the palate or the port of the mouth. So this is one of the bits that we're going to talk about, and there's two different kinds. There's one that's 45 degrees and there's one that's 30 degrees. And it all depends on whether your horse likes the tongue pressure or the poll pressure or the palate pressure. So we have to try those out.
Okay. So we have one more here.
So this is actually the example of what we were talking about with the 45 degrees. You can see how this piece is even tilted more forward. And the other thing about this bit here is that there's a lip chain. This is actually a lip leather that's being used to stabilize the curb. This is called a fly link, this little piece that comes through here. And you can see that this curb chain cover is leather. Okay, and I personally always ride with a curb chain cover on my horse.
Me too.
And I think it makes a little bit softer and even and more steady surface area to it, and there's no risk of having their chin pinch or twist underneath.
And this lip strap helps keep this in the right place.
That's right, and you can see that if you were wondering what that little hole was for on your curb, that's what it's for.
Yeah, and I think I have seen a lot of people that ride without any kind of guard on the curb chain, and if that works for your horse, that's fine, but you have to be aware that when you do use the curb rein, that if your horse is very sensitive, like your mare is sensitive in her poll, if the horse is very sensitive under the chin and you don't have a guard there, their reaction, rather than the curb having a head lowering effect, the horse is going to react like that because there's more pressure with the chain rather than it being protected like that.
And this is just another example of the curb chain guard. This is made of rubber. You slide it through here on each side and it wraps around, and they work quite well. So those are just some good examples of different bridles. Two of these are mine, one of these are yours, and every horse likes to have their own stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the bits. Let's start with the snaffles.
Okay.
All right. So you'll just maybe start with one at a time, and I'll talk about them.
Great.
This is a regular loose ring bridoon. Can you find me a snaffle just to show the regular snaffle to show the difference in the loop size? This one. This is a bridoon, and I know this because the size of the ring is much smaller. If you're going to ride in the double, you need to have the smaller ring so that it doesn't get caught up on everything. Okay, so the way I do it, and maybe you do the same, if whatever snaffle bit I have the exact same bit, but with the smaller rings for my double. Okay, so this is a really nice bit that is snaffle, but you can see that it has a little conformational bend in the middle that allows for the tongue space. Okay, some horses really need that and like that, and it's rounded over the top. So this is one type of snaffle. Let's give me a normal snaffle.
Okay, let's see. Normal.
This is a normal loose ring snaffle, and you can see the difference that we have in the shape of the mouthpieces. Okay, one has a curve to it, and one does not. Melissa, may I borrow you over there to come in?
Our able assistant. I know.
I need another set of hands. If you could just come here, thank you. And I want to just compare the shapes of the curve like this. I couldn't do it with one hand. There we go. Okay, so this has it just has a gentle bend to it. And this has a curve so that this is a little flatter so it doesn't bump the top of the mouth. And we're going to talk about that use. And you're going to hold the ones we're done with. This is another totally type of bit that has independent use of one side piece to the other. It also has a curve to it so that it sets in the horse's mouth.
It even has, the curve is even bigger.
The curve is even bigger, and the joint in there is like a little ball bearing. You can't see it, but you can move one side of the bit completely independently of the other side of the bit. And some horses really need that for pole flexion and suppling. Okay.
Okay. Have we been through everything here?
No, we haven't. We've talked about the two-piece snaffles. Now we're going to talk about the three-piece snaffles. And can you pull the curved one out again for me? This three-piece snaffle has a similar effect to the curved one. Turn it upside down to match. Yes. Sorry. Good. You can see that they both have a curve where the tongue goes over the top of the bit, but this one even lays flatter in the horse's mouth than this one. Thank you. And this is one of these KK Ultra bits. I happen to like this bit for a lot of reasons, but there is a wrong and a right way to put this on, and I find a lot of times that they're put on upside down and backwards, and you'll gasp and go, oh, how could you? It's actually very simple to put this bit on incorrectly if you don't know what to look for. If you could zoom in on this arrow, there is an arrow right at the edge of the bit. This arrow should be on the left side of your horse facing forward. So if I was putting the bit into my mouth, the left side of the horse and this little arrow should be pointed forward towards Jane. And that ensures, can I have your arm? That it lays over the horse's tongue in the correct manner. Certainly you're not going to put it in like this, but if you put it in this way, the nugget that's in the middle doesn't lay flat across the tongue. Okay, so if you have purchased one of these, and even if you haven't, most of the time these three pieces, even if they're not KKs and don't have a mark on them, there's a side of this nugget that has a longer oval than the bottom. That longer oval goes to the top. Okay, and this lays down on the flat. Okay.
well, we have several more snaffles.
This is just a plain loose ring bridoon.
Right. Small
Very
rings.
small rings, not too thick, not too thin, and we're going to talk about the difference of which to use on your horse when we start to think about putting the bit on Moshi. Again, this is another plain snaffle, but it's very, very thick, and you can see the difference. And you know, it used to be, Jane, that when I was growing up, everybody said the fatter the snaffle, the better.
Gentle.
The more gentle. That isn't really true. Now that they've done so many more scientific studies about the anatomy of the horse's mouth, it really has to be about the conformation of your horse's mouth.
Right.
They can have a fat tongue, or a narrow palate, or a narrow
Or
jaw,
a low palate.
or a low palate.
And this would be too much.
It would be way too thick. If your horse goes mouth around it and can't close its mouth, that's going to be uncomfortable for it, more so than a bit like this. Okay, now this one's
Let's go to the
extreme. Okay?
opposite extreme. Let me take this.
I would have to measure this to know if this is legal. There is a thinness bit rule of what you're allowed to use, of how thick or thin it is. And I'm not going to give you a number because everybody should check themselves their own bit with the rule book from year to year. But as you can see, this is very, very narrow and very tiny, and these are very small bit rings. This would give quite a bit of, I don't want to say severe, but because it's so narrow, there's less surface area to move everything around, okay? So now I'm going to just show you how the bit works.
Do you want to look at these
there's
other?
two more?
Yeah, we have,
Wow.
well, the full cheek here.
Okay. This is another kind of snaffle. This is a full cheek eggbutt snaffle. Okay, and I say eggbutt because it's similar to this, where the ring is not loose.
Like these.
Like those that you can turn and roll it around. The eggbutt has a quicker effect of your rein, but a lot of horses are more able to lock their jaw on an eggbutt because you can't use the ring to help you loosen the horse's poll so much, okay? This eggbutt full cheek, this has a really good use to it too. I'll often, when I'm having real young horses that don't quite know how to steer yet, when you use a full cheek, it blocks the bit from getting pulled through the horse's mouth, you know, and if I'm on a baby and we're in the ring and something comes in and scares her, or Melissa is riding around, and they don't know how to steer, so you're hoping that they're going to turn, and you have that big opening rein, a lot of times the bit will slip through, so this will help stabilize it from going left and right, and also can put a little bit of pressure on the cheek, so that if you are turning and steering, it can help you around. I don't ride in a full cheek hardly ever, except for with the young horses. Many people do, a lot of hunter jumper people do, and they're very in fashion for the hunter people. But I personally like loose rein, and this we would not be able to use with a double bridle, obviously, because it would get in the way.
What stabilizes this long shank here?
There is a keeper with two little loops. This goes over the top of the bit, and the second half goes in your attachment of your cheek piece. And sometimes some horses will prefer it with a stabilizer, with that keeper, and sometimes not. So again, it's totally up to how your horse feels. Okay, so have we done all of this?
I think we haven't looked at curved hits, but we've done all the snaffles.
The regular eggbutt works in the mouth the same as the regular snaffle, but we have this is elongated like the shape of an egg, which is why it's called an eggbutt, I think. And it allows the bit to move this way, but you can't move the bit ring circularly through the opening.